and welcome to String Art, brought to you by the Winfield Public Library. My name is Miss Choate, and I think some of you guys are getting familiar with me. I do programs at the library during normal summers, and now I'm doing virtual art programs with you. I also have a channel, it's Art with Miss Choate, where I do videos paired up with Miss Nucha, the children's librarian, on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. So for today's project, what we're gonna need either paint, which we're gonna water down, or ink, or food coloring. Any of these mediums will work for us to dip our string into and then pull them out. We're also gonna need an old book that can get potentially a little messy. We're going to need some thicker paper, like a card stock, but if you only have your normal printer paper, that's fine, it will work. And then we're going to need some yarn or embroidery thread, something that will absorb the paint or the ink or the food coloring. So I'm going to show you a lot of different techniques, and you can kind of pick and choose which ones work for you in your environment with the supplies that you have. So let's get started. So the first way we're going to try is with some liquid paint. Now this could be water and food coloring. If you have a watercolor, we've done this in a different Choate Art with Miss Choate video before, where we take our watercolor like this, break up a little cube, put it with some water, and you'll get a very similar effect. So what you're going to do is you're going to have an old book you don't care about, a piece of string, make sure it's absorbent, so like some yarn or embroidery floss. And if you're only doing one color, you could just actually drop your string into the bottle. It's already getting all over my hand, so be careful to not mark up your paper. And you want a thicker paper. This is like a cardstock that I have, and I cut my paper in half, and then we're gonna fold it in half as well. You want it to fit inside your book, so you don't want it to be too big. And we're also practicing at the beginning, so don't be too worried about how it's gonna look. So this is pretty good. I'm gonna put it right there, open. Now I'm gonna drop my string into my bottle. Now you might need, I also have some dishes out. You might need to pour some into a dish, but if your thread is clean, then you can just put it into your bottle. You might have to help coax it into there. And depending on your string, you can see it through this clear bottle. You can see it starting to absorb. Don't pull it out right away because it won't necessarily have full coverage yet. And don't drop it in. You want to leave yourself a little handhold that is not covered in paint. You can twirl it around a little bit. There we go. Now it's ready. I'm only going to do one color to start our demonstration. And however you twirl it onto your paper is going to inform the design you create. So I'm going to do a little loop there. And now I'm going to drop my thread. I'm going to close my book gently. I'm going to press firm, but don't press really hard, because then it'll be too hard for you to pull your string out. And you're going to gently pull your string out the bottom of the book. There we go. Now I can set my string down, and you should put down a mat so you don't get your table dirty. And now we're going to open up and see our beautiful first string art. So you can see my book got a little dirty. That's why I want you to do a book that doesn't matter. So now we're going to try again, but we're going to try some different supplies and different colors. So now I'm going to try a different color, but I'm not going to change my paper. I'm actually going to use the same one, and I'm going to even reuse my same string. So I don't want to get my paint dirty. So I'm going to put my watercolor in a dish. And now I'm going to drop my string into this dish. Now you don't have to go everywhere with it. You could just focus on the end, and then that way some of it's still purple. And a lot of this art technique is playing and experimenting. So now I'm going to put it in a different spot. I'm going to twirl it around, maybe try a different twirling technique. Now I'm going to close it gently. I'm going to close my paper first, close the rest of my book, press firm but not too hard, and pull out my string. Let's see what we got from that. I'm going to do one more over here. I'm going to try with this blue, and now I can also mix my colors together. I'm going to put a couple of drops into that dish, and I could either take a new string or I can use the same one. And also the type of string you're using will influence this art. So you can play around with what kind of string you're using. Same thing, hold down a little firm, pull string out. And there we have 3. Now we could cut this apart, or we could let this be one piece of art. We could go in and add decorations around, but I think we're ready to try another medium. So now the next thing I'm going to try is some acrylic paint. It doesn't matter what kind of acrylic paint. You may need to add some water if it's really thick, but we can also try it thick as well. So there we go. I'm going to add a little water and mix it up. Now that it's mixed up and you don't have clumps, it's a little better consistency, similar to that watercolor we were using. And make sure you can also mix these colors together. Don't just do straight out of the bottle. If you have a little bit of that watercolor left, go ahead, add it, see what it does. I'm all about not wasting. Any water-based supply can be mixed together. So a watercolor is water-based, acrylic is water-based, tempera is water-based, so a lot of the common paints you have in your house can be mixed together. So I like that it's a little bit darker red now, and I can take it and I'm going to use a clean string and I'm going to dip it inside my cup. Now you may need to take something and make sure it's coated, because with the watercolor it just absorbed with the acrylic paint. It doesn't want to do it on its own. So there we go, I helped it. Now I can pull it out. I don't want it to drip, so I'm just going to gently touch it to the side. And now I'm going to place it. I'm already liking how this one's looking a little bit better. Now I'm going to close it. Now that might have been too much paint for too little paper, we will see. And I'm going to pull it out the bottom. Yep, too watery. You can see that I can't see the detail of what was where. So that means that I should put more acrylic paint into that. So guess what? That's not too hard. All I have to do is put a little in there. Mix it up again, because this is experimenting. So don't get upset with yourself if you don't like how it looks the first time. You're just gonna play and try again. And it doesn't mean that this paper is done either. Maybe you wipe it away and it's your base now for something else. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a paper towel and I'm gonna wipe away some of that paint. I'm just gonna give myself kind of like a red background because I don't wanna waste this paper. And just because we're learning about string art today doesn't mean that you can't play with lots of different types of art and maybe invent your own style. So I'm gonna add a little bit of purple now that I have this red background, because red and blue make purple. So I figured maybe if I add this purple, make sure you shake your paints first, because mine just had a lot of its medium come out instead of the paint itself. And play with mixing colors. There we go. And I think colors that are mixed are so much richer and more beautiful than a color right out the bottle. These paints were meant to be mixed together. So there we go. It's kind of more like a dusty pink rose color. I love it. So I'm going to use that same red string though, because I think that's okay. And I'm not even going to push it down like I did before. I'm going to gently lift it up so it doesn't have that much. I'm touching it to the side of the cup to get rid of some of that paint because I don't want it to be as drippy this time. And I'm gonna go and I'm hoping that's gonna look like the outline of a rose. So this time I'm not even gonna use the pressure of the book because maybe that's too much. So it's coming out a little bit better. I'm seeing some of that pulling. So let's try a fresh piece of paper and see what we can get. So I'm even going to use some scratch that I have lying around. And we're going to try, I'm not even going to dip it again because I think there's enough paint on here already. I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to find some loops. I'm going to fold it. And again, I'm not even going to put the pressure of the book. I'm afraid that the pressure of the book, oh, there we go. Now we're getting that string art technique that we all know and love. I'm going to put one more here. And again, I'm not even going to dip it again. I think there's enough. I think my string absorbs a lot of paint. Now, this is where it could depend. Your string might be different than mine. So I think that's what was happening. My string, I'm liking these. Now I could go with another color, or I can even take this color and mix something else into it. So let's see, maybe I'm gonna do a drop more purple in it so it just changes the tone, but I'm not wasting this paint. And then I'll use this paint again for our next technique. So I'm gonna mix it up, and maybe you could even try not mixing it completely. What does that do? So I'm gonna put this brush aside, take my string, gently, not too much, and I'm gonna put it around, press down, not too hard. There we go. Look at how beautiful that came out. I love the way the purple pulled through onto the red. So now that so what I did here is I dropped some purple in and I only slightly mixed it. I dropped my used string into it and then I pulled it, and I love how this is looking. So you're gonna have to play yourself with how much you mix, how much water you put into your paint, and how much pressure you put onto your string when you're doing your string art. But I'm quite happy with how this one's looking. So let's move on to our next technique. For our next technique, we're going to be using a canvas. Now, you could still use a heavy paper for this, but we're going to be covering it in white. Now, you could pick something that already has some on it that maybe you want to focus a section. Like I'm thinking this section could have, or maybe over here could have. I'm not going to necessarily cover up the whole thing, but that's up to you. You could cover your whole thing, and we're going to put white paint on it, or a light colored paint. Now, it could be blue, it could be blue and white. That's going to be up to you. So I'm thinking about the sky, so I'm thinking about blue and white, and I would recommend you still water these down because you want the surface of your canvas to be wet when you're putting your string down, and you want it to be thick, but not too thick. So I had some leftover watercolors in mine, which I realized but thought they were blue. They were purple. So we're gonna have a purple background. I could even add a drop of the blue if I want it to be a little bit darker. I'm all about not wasting and just using what we have. And I know it's going to turn out beautiful. So I'm going to start to put this on my canvas. You could even do this directly to your canvas. And we're going to be moving it around. We want it to be wet when we apply our string. So you might have to move a little quickly. I wasn't planning on covering up the whole thing. Maybe I'll let sections show through. Now, acrylic wants to dry fast, and when you add the water, it slows it down. You could decide if you think the color is a little bit on the boring side, or maybe you want it to be a little bit lighter. Go ahead and directly add some drops of paint. to your canvas. You make up your own rules. I'm keeping my brush strokes going vertical, but that's up to you. This is just the base for this technique. So my canvas is wet. Now I'm gonna get my paintbrush or my string ready. So I'm gonna be using the same color, the same paint, but I'm gonna drop some of this bronze into it. I'm gonna leave them just drops. I'm gonna take a new string. And you could play with a new, like a totally different type of string, getting it in there. I'm trying to get it to hit those bronze spots. You may have to use a paintbrush to help it. Touch it up against the side just a little. And now I'm going to drop it on my canvas. Remember, the loops you do will define the flower. So I'm going to pull down. And I have my first lovely abstract flower. You can try to reuse the same one. I'm going to try, but if you have a lot of string, go ahead and grab a new one. You want to try to pull it straight, and we're going to keep on adding. You can also change up your colors as well. There we go. This is another way to do string art. It's a little more complicated. You have your wet background, your kind of watered down acrylic paints, and you're pulling it through something that's still wet. Now you could let some areas dry or use a heat gun to dry areas where you're going on top of each other, but I really love, if you look right here, how they are when they interact with each other. And right up here, they're starting to bleed into each other. I think they can be quite beautiful, and you can play with your colors more than I did. I'm just trying to use the supplies that I have out. Now, there are so many ways you could, if you had a chain, you could drag a chain through and that gives you a different look. You could put even more liquidy paint down and that will give you a whole nother look as well. So there's lots of different ways you can play with it. It's all about the supplies you have at home. I hope you had fun with your string art, playing with the different supplies you had. Maybe you created your own way to make string art. Remember, if you have chain, if you have yarn, if you have a thin twine, if you have a thick twine, all of those things affect your outcome. So your outcome will be different than mine, but I'd love to see what they look like. So post them on the Winfield Library page or Choate Studios page, tag both of us. Let us know what you created. I'd love to see it because I know how I'm happy with mine. I can't wait to see how yours turned out. So if you like this video, please hit that like button to let us know, and we can do more videos like this with Choate Studio and the Winfield Public Library. So please subscribe so you get notified for their summer reading. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Tune in tomorrow for Art with Miss Choate and Miss Nucha's story time. Bye.